What's happening, everyone? I hope you're well. What I thought we could do in this video is talk about the Chelsea squad. Chelsea have a hugely inflated squad. There are a lot of players at Enzo Maresca's disposal. Therefore, what we are going to have to do is we are going to have to flex our analytical football muscle. We are going to have to deduce exactly what players can do a job for Enzo Maresca in his very specific system. And we're also going to have to work out what players are going to have to leave. Okay, Enzo Maresca, this is not going to be easy, but I thought the best way to do it is via the tier list. Okay, what I'm going to try and do here is be really methodical. I'm not going to be emotional about it. I'm going to do what is right, fair, and just. And all for the furtherance of Chelsea Football Club. And just so you know, at the very end of this video, you'll see that there is a tier called Get Rid. There are some players that need to be got rid of. Some players that need to be confined to the ash heap of history. Some players that need to be forgotten. Some players that would make it into the worst ever Chelsea 11. And we will be talking about them at the very end of this video. We will start with our goalkeepers. It's a disaster to start with, isn't it? How have we got a situation where we basically don't have a goalkeeper that is good enough to play in the Premier League, particularly when you think of the way that Enzo Maresca wants to play? The goalkeeper in the Maresca system is vital. He is a key component and he simply must be able to play the correct way that Maresca wants the game to be played. Otherwise, the entire system crumbles. And what is fantastic is we don't have any goalkeepers who can play that system. We'll start with Robert Sanchez. What an absolutely disastrous signing that has been. What were we thinking? Why were we signing a goalkeeper who was seen as surplus to requirements at Brighton to bring him in to Stamford Bridge to make him our number one? An atrocious signing, a total waste of money, idiotic from the board, and just another example of why not having football people running the footballing decisions of a club is futile. Continuity, a director of football that actually knows what they are doing, a director of football who was employed for the furtherance of the team rather than for the furtherance of the finance. A director of football would have never allowed this to happen because we would have constantly been signing players who were conducive to playing in the Chelsea way rather than signing a load of players to play for a particular manager and then having to sign a load of players to play for another particular manager. We do not have a goalkeeper capable of playing the Maresca system, so we are going to have to sign one. So where does Robert Sanchez go? I mean, I don't care. I mean, I could almost put him in get rid, but because of what he'd done at Brighton, because of what his reputation once was, because of what he's achieved in the game up until now, maybe he can bring some value. So I'm going to say sell. I'm not going to be emotional about it. I think the emotional category for me is the get rid. The players that I just don't like. But for Robert Sanchez, I don't think he's good enough. I think he's been an atrocious signing, but we should hopefully be able to claw some money back for him. So he is the first entrant into the sell category. Next up is Petrovic. I love Petrovic. I think he's a really good goalkeeper. He isn't necessarily the kind of goalkeeper that Enzo Maresca is going to want to use. He isn't the kind of goalkeeper that can play as almost one of the defenders. You know, when you saw Leicester lining up, you would often see their keeper so advanced because they were playing such a high press. They wanted to keep the ball. And I don't think Petrovic ever really wants the ball at his feet. So is he going to be able to play week in, week out for Enzo Maresca? Probably not. But is he capable of doing a job for Chelsea when we most need him? Is he capable of being an excellent number two? I believe he is. I don't think he let us down once last year. I think he was a real standout player. I love the bloke, actually, and I think that he is most definitely a squad player. So in he goes. As we've discussed, I think Chelsea are going to have to sign a goalkeeper. For Enzo Maresca to do what he wants to do, we are going to have to provide him with the utensils. And one of the key components, one of the key utensils that he will need is a goalkeeper that can play out from the back. So Slonina and Bettinelli are both going to have to go out on loan. Right, next up is Axel Disasi. Now, he has been a disaster. He really has. I think people liked him, you know, when he dived headfirst into the away end at Selhurst Park. People love that. People react to that. People do like to see that passionate side of footballers. I'm often seen as being a passion merchant, but he is simply not good enough. Is he really going to be good enough on the ball to inspire Enzo Maresca? Absolutely not. There is nothing in Axel Disasi's armoury that is going to be conducive to playing the Enzo Maresca way. Therefore, Axel Disasi is going to need to be sold. We are going to have to try and recoup some money. The trouble is, we signed Axel Disasi for just under 40 million quid, and I just think we are going to struggle to get anything like that for him. But if we can, great. Let's try and recoup our money. If anyone offers close to 40 million quid, I think we bite their hands off. Marc Cucurella. Now, this is a very interesting one, isn't it? Because Marc Cucurella excelled towards the end of last season. When Pochettino finally found a bit of rhythm, when Chelsea went on to win 5 games in a row, Marc Cucurella looked like a man reborn. He suddenly looked like the man that was once Brighton's Player of the Year. He suddenly looked like the man that Pep Guardiola was desperate to sign for Manchester City to play in their problematic left-back position. And I now believe that Marc Cucurella should be starting for Chelsea. I actually think that Enzo Maresca is going to love him. I think he plays so well. He inverts brilliantly. We know how much Enzo Maresca loves inverting players. Apparently he does it with a keeper. So, Marc Cucurella is a starter for Chelsea Football Club. And I am happy to say those words. What a 12 months. By the way, I just need to let you know that we are inching ever closer to 300,000 subscribers. If you are enjoying this video, please do me a favour, click subscribe. It would be my honour to welcome you into this community. Thank you so much. Next up is Benoit Badiashile. I think he's okay. I think he can play quite well. And crucially, he's left-footed. We know that Maresca is going to want a left-footed centre-half playing at left-back, and we are short of those. You know, we have the option of Levi Colwill, but I think that Benoit Badiashile is a good squad player. I don't think he's good enough to be starting games for Chelsea. I think we have a problem at centre-half. So I'm going to put Badiashile in the squad player. I think if he were to play really well, I think he could win the place. I think it's up for grabs, that left-sided centre-half. I think Maresca will be looking at Badiashile, and I hope that he will rise to the challenge, because there were times last season when I thought he was great, but there were also times when I thought he looked dodgy. Sadly, Thiago Silva has gone, so I'm going to just put him in sell to get him out of the way. And now we're on to... With Thiago Silva out the way, we're on to the best centre-half at Chelsea, and that is Trevor Chalobah. Trevor Chalobah is undoubtedly the best centre-half at the club. The second that he came into the team, played with a bit of continuity. Trevor Chalobah didn't see Chelsea lose. I think that he is an outrageously good player. He is definitely better than any of the players that we signed. He's a better player than Benoit Badiashile. He's a better player than Axel Disasi, and he should be a starter for Chelsea next season. Now, I think we know, sadly, that that's not going to happen. I think we know that Trevor Chalobah is going to be sold. West Ham United have already been looking at Trevor Chalobah. They like the idea of signing him, and you can see why. He would be a great partner for Kurt Zouma. So I desperately hope that doesn't happen. I desperately hope that Enzo Maresca keeps Trevor Chalobah. You know, last season, I voted Chalobah as my player of the year, just because I love the way that he plays. I love how much he loves Chelsea. And I think it's so important that we have players like him in and around the first team. It will be a disgrace if Clear Lake sell Trevor Chalobah. But sadly, it feels to me like the writing's on the wall. But as a player, judging him as a player, there isn't a better centre-half at Chelsea Football Club at the moment. Therefore, how can you possibly justify selling him? Ben Chilwell. The trouble is, I don't think there's room for Cucurella and Chilwell in the team. And I think that Cucurella is a better player than Chilwell. I think Chilwell has really gone off the boil. When he's played last season, he's looked so out of sorts. And I don't know if he's ever going to be the marauding player that he was under Thomas Tuchel when we won the European Cup. When you combine those words with the fact that Chelsea are in a perilous financial situation, you suddenly think, do you need to sell Ben Chilwell in order to bring in some money? Because he is an asset. He's undoubtedly a good player with a big reputation who has been an England international. There is certainly a world where he could command a decent fee. So it's not that I want Chilwell to leave. I would like to put Chilwell in the squad player category, but we have to sell some players. We have to find some money somewhere. And it's not exactly change down the back of the sofa that we're after. So some names are going to have to go. And I think one of them could be Ben Chilwell. I can't believe I'm doing this. But I'm putting Ben Chilwell in the sell category. Reece James is so difficult, isn't it? Because Reece James is, in my opinion, the best right back in the league. I think he's actually probably the best player at the club. When you think about how good he is when he's on form, when you think about how fantastic he can be, he is undoubtedly one of the best right backs in the world at the moment when fit. The way that he can command that right-hand side, it's sublime. His eye for a goal, his delivery, his ability at tackling, his recovery pace. He has it all, but there is one crucial problem. Geezer's never fit. And do you need to draw a line? I don't think you do. I think you need to get him fit. We have a huge issue when it comes to our injuries. And this is something that Enzo Maresca is going to have to get to grips with. Something isn't right at Chelsea. The amount of injuries that we consistently have is problematic. And Maresca is going to have a look at that. He's going to have to talk to the medical staff because something doesn't feel right. The amount of injuries that we are consistently having. But the jewel in the crown of that injury list is always Reece James. It's all very well being the best player in the league, but if you play 12 games a season, does it really matter? So basically, we need him fit. We need him fit. If he's fit, he's a starter. If he's fit, he's captain. If he's fit, he's the best right back in the league. But it's almost a rhetorical question because he's never fit. I'm going to give him one last chance. I'm basically going to commit to Reece James and put him in my starter captain category. But this is a huge season for him. He simply needs to find rhythm, form, and consistent fitness. Right, next up is Levi Colwill. This is a player that I rate so highly. I was so full of trepidation last year. Do you remember when he was flirting with the idea of going to Liverpool? It really did look like we were going to lose Levi Colwill. And it was such a hateful feeling because he was brilliant for England in that tournament. He shone for England in that tournament, in fact. And then Jurgen Klopp was talking about trying to sign him. He stayed. I was delighted that he stayed, but the season felt slightly underwhelming. Not all of that was his fault. I think Mauricio Pochettino did him a massive disservice, constantly playing him left-back. He isn't a left-back. He looked out of his depth at left-back, and it didn't do him or the team any favours. But that changes nothing about the player that Levi Colwill is in his rightful position. And as a left-footer, he is worth his weight in gold. Enzo Maresca is going to love Levi Colwill. I believe that he will undoubtedly be a starter, and he immediately goes to the very top category. Malo Gusto, excellent season, shone, undoubtedly one of the best signings that Clear Lake have made. He will be a starter next season, no doubt. I am amazed at quite how brilliant he has been. And with the injury record that Reece James has, having Malo Gusto available just changes the way that you feel about the team. There was a time when if Reece James was injured, you knew that we weren't going to win a game. I think we went away to Southampton, in fact. We went away to Southampton under Thomas Tuchel, and on the way down there, it became apparent that Reece James was going to be out. We knew that we were going to lose. With Malo Gusto in the team, you can rotate. He is totally capable of deputising for Reece James. Gusto is a geezer. He's in. Wesley Fofana, I mean, it's just the constant injury issues, isn't it? It's such a worry. He's been so unlucky. You know, the leg break, the ACL, it's just such a shame. And I think it's only right to ask the question, can you recover from that? Can you genuinely find full fitness again? If you can, I think he is a starter for Chelsea. If he can't, we're going to have to sell him. And I just don't know the answer to it. Is a loan a good idea for someone like Fofana, or does he need to be a squad player at Chelsea? I think, really, he needs to be around the first team. So I'm going to put him as a squad player. If he can find full fitness, Fofana, fantastic. Let's get him in the team. But we need to see what he can do first. I don't think anyone is more obviously in need of a loan deal than Gilchrist. Brilliant player. I like him. I love the way that he celebrated a goal. He celebrated a goal the way that I would. He's a fan, isn't he? Scored for Chelsea and dived headfirst into the shed end. Love the bloke. Not good enough to play for us week in, week out at the moment, though. Not good enough to be in and around the first team yet. A loan will really be beneficial to him. Let's make sure that we pick a team and find the perfect loan for him. A loan that will allow him to develop, grow, make his mistakes elsewhere, and come back an even better player. Right, next up is Malang Sarr. Obviously, he's nowhere near good enough to play for Chelsea. He wasn't good enough years ago. So let's just sell him and try and get some money for him immediately. Enzo Fernandez. People aren't going to like this, but Enzo Fernandez isn't good enough to play for Chelsea. Enzo Fernandez isn't good enough to play in a Premier League midfield, in my opinion. For Chelsea to become the club that I am desperate for us to be again, Enzo Fernandez is nowhere near that team. He's so slow. He slows everything down. He needs so much time on the ball. He gets caught in possession. He cannot run. And I think that there's a player there. Of course there's a player there. But I'm not sure that his skill set is conducive to playing Premier League football. Chelsea never looked better than when Enzo Fernandez wasn't in the team. So I believe that we should sell him. I believe that we should be trying to get somewhere near the amount of money back that we paid for him. But obviously we're not going to be able to do that. So this could be one of Enzo Maresca's biggest jobs, one of his most important jobs, something that he will be judged on, something that the ownership will be telling him that he needs to get right because they need to protect their asset. I think that Enzo Maresca will be doing his best to get Enzo Fernandez playing well. He will be doing his best to get Enzo Fernandez starting week in, week out. It wouldn't surprise me if it was a prerequisite of him getting the job that he could find a way of getting Enzo Fernandez to play well. Realistically, I think we should sell him. But on a business level, it makes no sense. We would do really well to get 40 million quid for him. So I think we have to keep him. We have to preserve our asset. We have to build him up. We have to get him playing well and somehow help him rediscover the form that he demonstrated for Argentina at the World Cup. This could be the defining moment of Enzo Maresca's Chelsea career. Often managers are judged on how they get big signings playing. It was over for Frank Lampard at Chelsea when he couldn't get performances out of Timo Werner and Kai Havertz and Hakim Ziyech. When Thomas Tuchel deemed Romelu Lukaku not good enough to play for Chelsea off the back of Romelu Lukaku's disgraceful conduct, it was over for Thomas Tuchel. So whilst I believe that Enzo Fernandez should be here in this segment, maybe even in this one, I think that he is going to be a starter. And Enzo Maresca has to find a way of getting Enzo Fernandez playing and playing well for Chelsea. I think Ugochukwu needs a loan. You know, we've got to get him playing well. We've signed him on such a long contract. That is the problem with so many of these players. They are on such long contracts. So ultimately, Leslie Ugochukwu needs to go out on loan, maybe go back to Rennes where he played well, and somehow find form and either come back to Chelsea off the back of that form, or we can sell him off the back of the form that he displays on loan. Carney Chukwuemeka, the absolute boy. Love this fella. I think he is a great player in waiting. I think he's going to have a big season for Chelsea and is most certainly a starter. In fact, he will be playing and starting games for Chelsea next season. I nearly had him as a squad player, but he's so much better than that. You know, he's just such a perfect midfielder. Such presence, so versatile, brilliant on the ball. I really do believe that Carney Chukwuemeka is going to have a big, impactful season for Chelsea this year. Next up is Conor Gallagher. Now, this one fills me with dread because I think we know that he is going to be leaving. You know, you don't need to be Hercule Poirot to work out that the board are desperate to squeeze every single penny that they can out of this Chelsea squad, and the easiest way to do that is to sell Conor Gallagher. From their perspective, he's worth 50 million quid. He demonstrates nothing but profit, and in their eyes, he is totally replaceable. They're looking at the Chelsea squad, and they are saying that there are other options. So sell Conor Gallagher and make sure that Fernandes plays well. Sell Conor Gallagher, make sure that Leslie Ugochukwu plays well. Sell Conor Gallagher, make sure Carney Chukwuemeka plays well. But this is so short-sighted. It is so idiotic. And frankly, it is detestable. Conor Gallagher belongs at Chelsea. Conor Gallagher is one of Chelsea's brightest players. Conor Gallagher played more minutes for Mauricio Pochettino than any other player. And Conor Gallagher, I believe, is the reason that Mauricio Pochettino is no longer the Chelsea manager. Whatever I personally think about Mauricio Pochettino, he is undoubtedly one of the best managers in the world. He is in the top 20, 15, 20 managers in the world. And he would look at Conor Gallagher and want to play him every week. That is why Conor Gallagher featured for Pochettino more than anyone else. So when Pochettino would have had a conversation with the board, and the board would have said to him, we are selling Conor Gallagher, Pochettino would have said, don't be ridiculous. I need him. I play him every week. He is the heartbeat of my team. He is the sometime captain of my team. And he is an excellent player who brings out the best in those around him. Moises Caicedo looks 10 times the player when he's playing alongside Conor Gallagher than he ever did when he was playing alongside Enzo Fernandez. And I know that people don't like to talk like this, but Conor Gallagher does so much for the fans. The fans love him. The fans feel a rapport with him. He is a local lad who is a Chelsea fan who is playing for Chelsea. You know, while I was on holiday, I read Jamie Carragher's book. He said how important it was for Liverpool, for the city of Liverpool, when they had Steve McManaman, Robbie Fowler, Jamie Carragher in the first team. Trent Alexander-Arnold is worth his weight in gold to Liverpool, not only because of what he does on the pitch, but because of what he represents. And Conor Gallagher is so important to Chelsea. It would be a disgrace to sell him. But sell him they're going to do. Therefore, whilst I truly believe that he should be here, he should be a guaranteed starter. I love Conor Gallagher, and whatever club he goes to, they will benefit from having Conor Gallagher in the team. Realistically, I can't do it. I can't do it. Conor Gallagher is a starter for Chelsea. And if the board get rid of him, they should all be sacked. They should hang their heads in shame. Next up is one of the easiest that we are going to talk about today. It's Moises Caicedo. Moises Caicedo is a gift to you. It's a gift to me because do you know what he is? He is the litmus test when you talk to people to know if you want to talk to them anymore about football. You know, certain things you can just flag and see how someone reacts to it. And from that moment, you know, do you want to talk to that person anymore or do you want to cut that person out of your life and pretend they didn't exist? If somebody says to you that Moises Caicedo was a flop, if somebody says to you that Moises Caicedo, one of the worst signings ever, totally let himself down, Brighton ripped Chelsea off, anyone that says anything like that, just politely excuse yourself from the conversation and never speak to that person again. Because all they are doing in that moment is demonstrating to you that they do not understand football and they clearly don't watch it. And all they are doing is reading the headlines. Moises Caicedo excelled for Chelsea last year. He was one of Chelsea's best players. Got off to a slightly slow start, but ultimately was a fantastic player, is going to be a fantastic player. And Chelsea were a far better team with him starting. Quite frankly, Chelsea are lucky to have Moises Caicedo. And anyone who says otherwise is cool. But just excuse yourself. It's a bit like that Hernan Crespo thing. You know, if somebody says to you that Hernan Crespo was a flop at Chelsea, you know, if somebody says the Chelsea curse, the centre-forward curse, and they start listing them, some of them are correct. You know, if you want to say Chris Sutton, absolutely. If you want to say Adrian Mutu, absolutely. If you want to say Timo Werner, absolutely. If you want to say Alvaro Morata, absolutely. As soon as somebody says Hernan Crespo, just go, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? So I'm going to be polite here, but I'm going to pretend that my phone's ringing. Hello? Yeah, I'll be right there. Yes, I'll be right there because I'm talking to a moron. Right, Casadei is the most obvious loan that you could possibly say. I think Romeo Lavia probably needs a loan. Or does he need to be starting for Chelsea? If Conor Gallagher goes, then no. Let's go Lavia starting games for Chelsea. Who the hell is that? It's Castledine, isn't it? I mean, I only saw him play against Borough. Obvious loan. Hopefully it goes well. Raheem Sterling needs to be sold. It's as simple as that. Raheem Sterling is done at Chelsea. I like Sterling. Look, he's from my neck of the woods, but ultimately Sterling, it hasn't worked. What we've needed him to be, he hasn't been. We needed him to be Cole Palmer. I wanted him to be what Cole Palmer did for us this season. Carry us. Be everything that we need him to be. And ultimately, Raheem Sterling needs to leave Chelsea. Partly because it hasn't worked for him. Partly because it hasn't worked for the club. I think both the club and Raheem Sterling need a new option. But also, going back to the finances of Chelsea, Raheem Sterling is one of the prized assets that we could actually get some money for. You know, Raheem Sterling is worth an awful lot of money. The only reason why he could stay is presumably he has a relationship with Enzo Maresca. They would have worked together at Man City, wouldn't they? I think. So maybe there's something in it. Maybe there is something in it. But I believe that Raheem Sterling will leave because he needs a new challenge, because Chelsea need a new option, and also because Chelsea need some old-fashioned pie and mash, and he can bring it in. Mykhailo Mudryk. I'm going to be frank here. Mykhailo Mudryk isn't good enough to play for Chelsea. Mykhailo Mudryk needs to be sold. It was an error ever signing him. People will tell you that he can come good. People will tell you that he does some brilliant things. A dear friend of mine, Olivia Bazaglo, bangs on about how good he is all the time. And it winds me up. Or I just don't see it. But one way or the other, I believe that Mykhailo Mudryk needs to leave. He can bring in some money. He needs a new challenge. He's so lightweight. I just don't think he is correct for Chelsea. I don't think he's anywhere near good enough to play for our first team. When you think about the options that Chelsea have, I never see why Mykhailo Mudryk is the option. I will always play Noni Madueke over him. I will always want to see Carney Chukwuemeka on the pitch over him. Cole Palmer is 10 times the player that he would be. And in fact, if it comes down to a shootout between Raheem Sterling and Mykhailo Mudryk, I far prefer Raheem Sterling. Oh, you talking to the devil? Noni Madueke. I like him, you know. I like it. I think he's done well. I think that Chelsea looked far better with Noni Madueke in the team. You know, when Enzo Fernandez was injured, Enzo Fernandez made way ultimately. Noni Madueke came in. We sort of rejigged the midfield a bit with Gallagher and Caicedo. I think that we look great. I really do. I love the way that Madueke plays. So confident, so on the front foot. And look, people get a little bit self-righteous about the penalty and all that. He shouldn't have done it. There's no way that he should have tried to take the penalty. But, you know, I think that we can be incredibly moralistic sometimes as football fans. And realistically, particularly now the season is over, it doesn't matter. Madueke will have a big season for Chelsea next season, I'm sure of it. Nicholas Jackson, a man who was lambasted and laughed at for no apparent reason. He isn't the striker that we need him to be. He isn't a finisher. He isn't ruthless in front of goal. But he is an excellent player who most certainly contributes to Chelsea. He 100% does a job for Chelsea. I think the players who play with him become better players when he's on the pitch. I think he is a selfless player. He is so generous in the way that he approaches the game. And ultimately, Nicholas Jackson will be featuring heavily for Chelsea next season. He is a squad player. The reason why he isn't a starter is because I simply think we need to sign a proven goal scorer, someone who will guarantee hitting the back of the net. The one flaw in Nicholas Jackson's game, and it really does feel like the one flaw in his game, is that he just doesn't finish. He doesn't finish his chances. You know, the geezer misses sitters. But sitters aside, he's a very good player, and I want to see him in a Chelsea shirt next season. Christopher Nkunku. Oh dear. It's so difficult, isn't it? Because he's just so injured. And do you know what's such a worry? The injury that kept him out of the World Cup in Qatar. He came back to Chelsea on pre-season last year. I think it was against Wrexham. There was a recurrence of the same injury. Now that is a worry. When the same injury keeps popping, it's going to affect the player mentally. It's going to affect the strength in that knee. And I am very worried that Christopher Nkunku will never get to be the player that we think he is capable of being. The injury record isn't good. You know, it wasn't good at Leipzig. It's not good here. And I don't really know what to say here. I just don't think he can keep fit. If he can keep fit, he's a good player. He's a player that can contribute massively to Chelsea. I guess what we have to do is hope that Maresca can sort out our crippling injury situation, get Nkunku playing, and if he can be playing well. You know, the link-up play between him and Jackson and Mudryk on pre-season last year prior to his injury was impressive. Feels like a long time ago now, though, doesn't it? Basically, this is it, make or break. He has a good season this year or he leaves next summer. I idolise this man. I don't even need to say where he's going. It's Cole Palmer, top tier, unbelievable footballer. I think that people don't acknowledge quite how brilliant he is, you know. I don't think people actually seem to process how amazing he is, how amazing he has been for Chelsea. He was sat on Manchester City's bench last year and he'd never scored a Premier League goal. He signed for Chelsea for 40 million quid and he went on to score 20 Premier League goals for us. Do you know how amazing that is? Particularly when you bring in the context of the team that Chelsea were last year. We were dreadful. We were all over the place at times. We were totally rudderless. And yet, we had this diamond in the rough. Cole Palmer is silk personified. He is everything that I want a footballer to be. I adore the man. I'm just terrified that he's going to leave. Because if you are a vulture and you were looking at Chelsea and you were looking at ways of squeezing money out of the club, Cole Palmer is an asset. But we need to build a team around this boy. He is generational. Next up, we'll do Diego Moreira. Obviously, he goes on loan. He looked all right when we played Wimbledon. I mean, we made hard work of the game, but Moreira's going on loan, isn't he? David Washington, another one I think needs a loan. And last up is Dujan Richards, who obviously needs a loan deal. So we'll put him in there. So now, the part of the video that I believe it is my duty to do. We are talking about the get rid section. I do not have their images available because they're not here, but I do have a wonderful editor who's probably capable of showing you them now. The two players that are going in the get rid section are Kepa Arrizabalaga and Romelu Lukaku. Kepa Arrizabalaga is still a Chelsea player, and I believe that Kepa Arrizabalaga could go down as one of the worst signings in Premier League history. When you think about what he was supposed to do, when you think about what he delivered, and when you think about how much he cost, the length of contract, and who he replaced, it is a shambles. Kepa Arrizabalaga was put on a 6-year deal when they weren't a regular thing at Chelsea. He also cost 70 million quid. We signed Kepa Arrizabalaga off the back of one good season for Chelsea. Since then, he has been a thorn in our side. He has been a woeful goalkeeper. He has disrespected the office of Chelsea manager. And frankly, he's just not a very good goalkeeper. He's been at Real Madrid this season, but it hasn't exactly gone his way. And basically, we need rid of Kepa Arrizabalaga. If we can get some money for him, great. But it has gone so long now that we simply need rid of him. So please, somehow, let's find a way out of Chelsea Football Club for Kepa Arrizabalaga. And last up is the worst ever signing in Premier League history. That signing is Romelu Lukaku. Not only is Romelu Lukaku the worst ever signing in Chelsea history, but he is also, arguably, the worst ever signing in Manchester United history. If you were to do a top 10 of worst Premier League signings ever, Romelu Lukaku could and probably should feature on it twice. I detest Romelu Lukaku, the way that he hung Chelsea out to dry, the way that he mistreated his teammates, the way that he embarrassed his manager, Thomas Tuchel, taking on that unsanctioned interview with Sky Italia where he told the world that he wished he wasn't playing for Chelsea and he was desperate to get back to Italy. It's a hateful way for him to have conducted himself. And for that reason, I don't want him anywhere near Chelsea. I think he is toxic in the dressing room and we desperately need rid of Romelu Lukaku. One way or the other, get him out of the team. You know, Antonio Conte has gone to Napoli. Surely he'll do us a favour and take Romelu Lukaku off our hands. So into the get rid section goes Kepa Arrizabalaga and Romelu Lukaku. And that, therefore, finishes this video. Thank you to everyone for watching. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Really interested to hear what you have to say. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please click subscribe. And we'll see you all on the next video.